Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens. I'm Parikshit Luthra. India has announced a sweeping reform of its indirect tax system. The government has simplified its goods and services tax regime from 4 slabs to just 2, that is 5% and 18%. There's also a special rate of 40% that will apply to sin goods or luxury goods. Nearly 99% goods which were previously in the 12% tax slab have been shifted to the 5% slab. The new rates will apply from 22nd of September. These include FMCG, small cars, bikes, medical, agricultural equipment, and many more. The Confederation of Indian Industry has praised the reforms as a game changer and asserts that the GST cuts combined with lower interest rates will soften the blow of the 50% US tariffs in India. Meanwhile, the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry believes simplified tax structures will boost compliance, reduce confusion, and stimulate consumer demand. Will these bold reforms boost growth and bring foreign investors to India, and with a much greater pace as well? To discuss this, we are now joined by Richard Rossow, Chair on India and Emerging Asia Economics at the Centre for Strategic and International Studies. We also have with us Richard Heald, Chair at the UK-India Business Council. Richard, let me begin by asking you, do you feel this will improve the sentiment among foreign investors when they look at India as a manufacturing opportunity, as an opportunity where they can deepen their investments?
Absolutely. I think that simplification of the tax structure has many benefits as far as people looking at India are concerned. And as you rightly say, the two-tier structure is a simplification, not only a simplification, but also a reduction in certain key areas that are opportunities, if you like, and focuses for companies looking at investing in India. And the other thing that I think that is important is that the two tiers simplified structure actually enhances compliance. And we've seen elsewhere in the world that if you have a simplified or simplify your tax structures, that tends to boost consumer confidence, it boosts acquisitions. It also boosts the fact that the tax take for the government increases as well. So I think it's a win-win all around.
Right, a win-win all around. Let me go across to Rick now. Rick Rossow, how do you believe the US companies will see this reform push at a time when the relationship is rattled, it's strained, it's hit by tariffs?
Well, it looks like India has taken advantage of a crisis. You really saw very little interest in significant reforms. I mean, some nice rhetoric around the finance minister's budget speech, but not a lot of steps since the Modi government was reelected a little over a year ago on taking big swings at domestic reforms. And, as you and I have talked about in this program in the past, Parikshit, the key to India's growth is not a trade agreement with the United States. That's a good to have, but not a must have. Must have is domestic reforms. And this is one of the biggest ones at the union level that they could pull out and bring out. A lot of American investors that look at India, they still don't consider India to be necessarily, because of logistics constraints, energy prices, a range of other reasons, as the best place to set a big global manufacturing hub. They're investing in India a lot of times it is for the domestic market. Well, reforms like this really do open up the opportunity to sell more domestically if we're producing domestically. So to me, I think this is a massive win. It shows the government's interested in reforms, which is obviously an incentive unto itself, but specifically unlocking the consumer market, which for a lot of manufacturing investment that's going there and would like to go there, that's the big target. Not leveraging India yet as a big global producer, but doing it for the domestic market. So a big help, big step in the right direction.
Right. Richard Heald, we've been seeing how the UKIBC on a year-on-year basis has been doing surveys on the business sentiment in India and how UK companies feel about India. Where was GST as a pain point earlier, and how important is this for UK companies? And do you expect certain areas to see more interest from UK companies as a result of these GST rate rationalization measures?
Yeah, well, as you say, Parikshit, we have been doing surveys on an annual basis, really, since GST was first even conceived. And prior to the introduction of GST, there was a lot of focus on the complicated structures that existed within within India. GST came in. That was welcomed. We've seen the GST Council, if you like, simplifying the system as it moved forward. And I have to say that I think that if one had tried to produce a perfect structure of GST, we would probably still be talking about that. But this gradualist approach, which now is culminated in what we're seeing now in the two-tier structure, is absolutely what British business is wanting. And if you couple that also with the comprehensive economic trade agreement that has been signed between our two prime ministers, then it really makes a compelling case for companies who are operating in India now to increase those areas of focus, but also companies that are not operating to really look at what the opportunities are in India. And, I'm picking out certain things. Obviously in sustainable energy, that is one huge area. Healthcare, life insurance, those are two areas that I think we'll see a lot of growth and activity coming into it. Manufacturing, you talk about automotive. So a lot of areas around where consumers can benefit and companies can benefit.
Right, that's an important point. And Rick Rossow, CSIS has been tracking reforms in India ever since the Modi government came to power for the first time in 2014. You've been tracking the performance of different government schemes as well. How do you think this is going to boost consumption, manufacturing by different companies in India? And overall, how is this going to help the Indian economy, according to you?
Yeah, we do every 5 years. We pull together a new list of 30 big reforms the government should consider. We do that talking to Indian businesses, major economists, and others. And GST for the new version of the scorecard we produced a year ago when the Modi government came in for its third term. There's 3 different reforms on GST that made it onto the scorecard this time. The step the government just took was certainly one of them on consolidating slabs. There still are some other issues, though, regarding getting GST closer to perfect. You still have major parts of the economy that are not part of GST. Issues like electricity, hydrocarbons, alcohol, which are significant components of the Indian economy and aren't even part of the GST program. Also, some other issues on compliance. Specifically, you can have an audit on one single GST transaction where you got audits across multiple states. So there still are a few other things on GST that I think the government should continue, focusing on improving, because this is one of those topics that helps companies across a wide range of industries. But to your question, Parikshit, yes, a hugely stimulative effect on what companies do and what they think about. You can put down incentives on growing capacity for producing something, which you've seen the government do pretty actively. You can put down incentives on skilling and labor, but at the end of the day, companies grow when they sell more stuff. And when you reduce the price point for consumers to buy their stuff, then suddenly companies have a lot more incentive to grow. And I like something that Richard had pointed out too, when you talk about the impact on life insurance, because you've also got in a few other sectors other reforms that are taking place at about the same time, and life insurance is top of mind. They didn't get the bill through Parliament to increase the FDI cap to 100%, but the finance ministry had just put out a new set of regulations. It's going to relax some of the regulations that really hurt the way that foreign investors engage in the market, independence of directors and some other things. So when you think of relaxation of foreign investment restrictions, and then a couple of days later, they put out bringing life insurance down to zero, hugely stimulative impact on companies that are both in manufacturing, because you're going to have a lot more people buying stuff, but a lot more appetite from investors. So for sectoral regulators to look at this moment too and put a few sweeteners in the pot, like what happened in insurance, is a pretty good idea as well.
Right. Richard Heal, do you believe that now that India and UK have signed a historic FTA, and it's come at a time of geopolitical storms and trade tensions, will this make UK companies, UK businesses bet more confidently on India, who are considering diversification away from China, for that matter, to invest more here?
Well, I think the question is more, does, if you like, India become more attractive in its own right? The central, the CETA is hugely important. We're in a process of ratification. But what we are seeing at UKIBC is a huge increase in interest of those companies who are in the supply chain. They tend to be MSMEs or SMEs who see an opportunity here to really plug into the consumer demand that is being generated. And particularly, I think, taking Rick's point, the reduction in GST is going to have a stimulative effect on consumer demand because there will be decrease and in certain key areas. Right. So it is really attractive, and it will further, if you like, focus people's attention on what the opportunities are for UK companies in India.
Right. Rick Rossow, if you were now to be asked about the next reform that India must focus on that will make things very attractive for US businesses in an uncertain tariff environment, what would that be?
Well, at the union level, you still have about 40 sectors that still have some form of foreign investment limitation, whether it's an FDI cap or other regulations. So, in terms of stoking investment from foreign companies and really playing against sometimes, at least from the United States standpoint, these tariff concerns. If we're going to have high tariffs and it's hard to move trade, get companies to invest, and removing some of these FDI, which is in e-commerce, it's in retail, it's in insurance, it's a whole range of sectors. But the other big agenda, which the government only taps at every once in a while, is encouraging and stoking state-level reforms. The government's talked about going back and ranking states' business environment, about modeling draft regulations for states. And at the end of the day, what companies need, even more than GST changes, is reliable electricity, is water and power. And there's only a couple of states in India that are really focused on making that happen. India's growth is going to take off when more states start pulling at the oars and getting a lot of the local reforms done on land and labor and electricity and things like that. And the union government could play a stimulative role, I think, in helping more states to take up the charge and begin taking some of those tough choices.
Right. And finally to you, Richard Heald, if you were to be asked about the next big reform that India should focus on, what would be your recommendation?
Well, I think that increasing or deepening the ease of doing business reforms, I think, is a key one key area. I think also putting in place a framework which boosts innovation and R&D. I mean, as we know, the real kind of, if you like, journey that has driven the free trade agreement between UK and India has been joining up the upstream innovative capacity of the UK and the downstream, if you like, manufacturing skills of India and the scalability. And I think that that's a key area that one should be really focusing on. So that is really the two areas that I would focus on.
All right, Richard Heald, Rick Rossow, thank you very much for joining us on Global Lens on CNBC TV 18 Prime, giving us your view on the big GST reform and what India needs to do next. All right, on that note, we take a short